Welcome into the JP and Hack Show, part of the Field of 12 Media Network, sponsored by Bet River Sportsbook. That is my guy, Christian Hackenberg, the man himself. I am merely Joshua Perry. And Christian, this is going to be probably the best weekend of college football so far. And the only reason I'm saying that is Aaron Judge hit 62, so we don't have to deal with them fucking cuttings anymore. I was so tired of those things, man.
It was bothering me, man. Because the thing is when you look historically speaking, when's the last time they did that for anybody? And not to take anything away from Aaron Judge, like great year, man. But hey, if I wanted to watch Aaron Judge hit his 60-second home run, I'd be watching it, not my Purdue Minnesota game or my Alabama Arkansas football game. No, I don't care. It's not my choice here. So yeah, I'm happy that it's not forced on us any longer. It's not forced on us.
Yeah, it's totally where I'm at, man. It was interesting. I had a conversation with a baseball guy. He's a national baseball writer. Do some TV with him, and basically what I said was, like, I understand how historic the moment was, but the TV people did everything possible to make sure that anybody who wanted to watch that moment could watch it. Like, it wasn't just on Yes Network. Like, they had it on MLB Network nationwide. So if you're a baseball fan, you could find it. Like, if I tune into a college football game, I'm there to watch college football. I'm not there to watch Aaron Judge swinging and then walking eventually. Like, it was wild. So no more of that unadulterated college football this weekend. I'm excited for it. Get you some scores from last weekend and then hit you with a few recappers. Michigan handling business in Iowa City, 27-14. Purdue pulling off the victory over Minnesota, 20-10. Illinois, and we both had this one. I'm not exactly sure that we had it in such emphatic fashion, though. Boat race Wisconsin, 34-10. Maryland over Michigan State, 27-13. Michigan State struggling. The game I was on the call for, Ohio State 49, Rutgers 10. Penn State in an ugly, nasty weather victory over Northwestern, 17-7. And then Nebraska getting in the win column for the first time in a while, 364 days since they've done it against an FBS opponent, 35-21 over Indiana. I know Mickey Joseph, really happy about that one. That was actually a pretty fun game too. Saw some pretty good offense. But to get to some recaps, we had spent a lot of time talking about Michigan and Iowa, and both of us had pointed to the fact that key in that game was going to be the play calling and the quarterbacking for Michigan. Don't call anything too sexy. Don't get bored doing the regular things. And for JJ McCarthy, like, handle the ball really well, make the throws that you're supposed to make, but nothing more than that. And that's exactly what they got. And it feels like vintage Jim Harbaugh to me, where you get a heavy dose of run, and that offensive line is playing extremely well. But Blake Corum's a special running back. And then JJ McCarthy, it seems like it's going to be a week by week. What can we add? What can we give him that's not too much right now, but is going to have him in position to make the big plays when they need him at the end of the year? I like what they're doing right now.
Yeah, I think that slow build's really important. And to your point, JJ doesn't need to go out and win them games right now in their schedule. He just needs to play his part. But there's some people and some teams that are down the road here where JJ's probably going to have to make 7 to 10 plays outside of what they're asking him to do. That's going to give Michigan a chance to win the football game or not. So building into that, I think is great. It's a slow progression. I think right now the offense will go as long into that meat of the schedule as that offensive line continues to be dominant and allow Blake Corum to run the football. If they can run the football, it's going to help tremendously. And it's going to help JJ's progression tremendously as well. But I like where he's going. You saw a couple things this past weekend, just some miscommunication, Ronnie Bell, him, just certain things that you see from a young guy with some veteran guys outside that expect something else. You see those things happen, but JJ is just he's got to continue to take the opportunities that are given to him, execute when he can, and then show these coaches week in, week out that he's getting better. He's seeing the field better. He's understanding even just, ebbs and flows and timing. Hey, it's 2nd and 3. Like I probably expect maybe a shot here from the minus 42. Like, you know what I mean? Just overall football flow. I think he'll continue to get that, and he's dynamic, so you can't take that away from him.
No, he certainly is dynamic. I think this evolution offensively is going to be fun to watch for Michigan this year. And you flip it over to the Iowa side. I mean, I don't know how much we can keep hammering it, like what they're doing right now. And it's bad. And I don't know if and when it gets better. Like, I don't think it's happening this season, but I'm even projecting like to next year. The quarterback options, to me, it doesn't sound like they're going to be able to take that next step, putting the ball in the air. If I was a wide receiver within that program, I'd be evaluating what my future looks like, seeing what Charlie Jones is doing at Purdue. It's definitely a tough spot. And this is I think the play that epitomizes what this Iowa offense has been this year. But you go for it on a 4th down. It's like 4th and 2 or 4th and 3, and you throw a 1-yard route. Like,
what are we doing here? You don't have any guys that can catch run.
Come on, man. It's rough.
It is rough, man. And to your point, like, I don't want to keep beating a dead horse. I think we can put a stamp on this. They've played 5 games now. They're just a bad football team. They're a bad football team offensively. They're a great defense. I don't want to take that away from them. I think their defense is good, very, very good, challenging. But having one and not having the other, you're pissing in the wind with that. Like, they're just a bad football team, and it's going to be really tough for them to dig themselves out of the holes that they've put themselves in offensively, because it's scheme, whatever you want to say, but I don't think they have any options to change this game, because I've seen that too. Like, people are like calling for like, hey, we need to modernize, revolutionize. Like, with what? With who? You know what I mean? Like what do you got sitting in your locker room that's going to allow you to do that? So, yeah, I just want to put the stamp on it and put that to bed. Like, I'm not expecting Iowa to win many more football games here towards the back half of the season.
And I say this because I tried to put stamps on things last week and it bit me in the ass. I was still in the hunt, buddy. So there's no stamp in this thing yet. So I'm not going to let you make the same mistakes that I've made. Let's get on to this Purdue, Minnesota affair. And last week I was totally out on Purdue and I was all in on Minnesota. And this is what I had to say. I had Purdue just a spot ahead of them, and I'm a freaking idiot sandwich. What are you?
An idiot sandwich.
For doing that, so I'll take that one right on the chin. But I'm riding Minnesota. I'm calling it today. They're winning the West. And if I'm going to give you another hot take on this show, I think their biggest challenger in the West right now is the Fighting Illini. I think Purdue has made too many errors. They've proven to me that they're going to be stubborn and make some mistakes. I look at Iowa, and sure, I love the defense and special teams. That offense is abysmal. They're not going to be able to score enough points. They're just not going to be able to do it. And I look at Wisconsin, and I'm with you. Like, is Graham Mertz going to give you some good games? Yes. Is he also going to give you some freaking snoozers? Absolutely. I don't trust them. And you look at the other teams in there in Northwestern and Nebraska, they're cooked. They're both cooked. So Minnesota right now winning the West, done deal. So Hack, that was a very impassioned tirade about what I thought of Purdue. They had done too many things early in the season for me to be all in. And you were the voice of reason actually a week ago. You said, listen, man, I know that they're not doing the great things that winning football teams do, but it's a talented roster. Jeff Brom knows how to scheme. They can make the adjustments. And I mean, they pretty much played it the way that they do defensively. The biggest adjustment that I think Purdue made was that they ran the football and they put an emphasis on it. It made a difference in the game. And then Minnesota, just uncharacteristic mistakes that they made. And I don't think that it's reason for me to panic, but Purdue took advantage of the opportunity. That's a very good win for them.
Yeah, I think the one word that summarizes this football game was ugly to me, top to bottom, because to your point about what I said last week, I was like, is Aiden O'Connell playing? Because I'm so in on this kid, and he played the worst game he may have played as a Purdue starter against this team. To your point, though, offensively, I don't know if it was a combination of them not really having a ton of confidence in the way Aiden was playing, and they're like, well, here's what we got to do, or they actually put an emphasis on it heading into the week, but they were able to run the football and it ended up being a big thing. But 5 turnovers, maybe more combined, 5 just within the quarterback room, on both sides of the football. It was just ugly. And to your point, I'm not concerned about Minnesota. I still think that this is the best football team. No Mo Ibrahim, I think, was something that we can talk about.
It's a huge
I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but to me, when you see the way they've played with and without Mo Ibrahim over the past 2 years, it's a big difference. So getting him back, getting him in, moving forward throughout the rest of the side, I'm still really all in on Minnesota, but I think that this Purdue team, it's not a bad football team, man. And to your point, I mean, I guess the West is wide open, so we'll see who throws the dice the best here in the back half of the season.
I'll tell you and this is not a personal thought of mine, but I was doing a show yesterday. Dave Wannstedt, who coached, with the Cowboys in Miami and the Bears, for people who don't know, he is very good defensive mind. Did a show with him yesterday, and he said that not having Mo in the game was probably a bigger deal because of the timing. And I'm not sure if anybody within that Minnesota program knew during the week that he wouldn't be able to go. He was banged up coming out of their game against Michigan State, but he warmed up. He had his helmet on the sidelines during the first drive of that game as if he was going to play. The TV broadcast crew had no idea, and they were pissed off about it because when you do your show open, typically the SID is going to let you know which guys are in and which guys are out, so you can avoid talking about certain things so you don't sound like a dumbass on TV. And I've been burned by that in the past, and they got burned. I think they fully expected this man to play, and he didn't. And so as a defense, having prepared and having your safety blanket on the other side in the game, and now he's not there, it kind of changes the way that you might have to approach the game. Like, all right, we're going to have to bow up. But you didn't think about that throughout the week. Offensively, it's the same thing. Maybe that was the difference maker. And I'm not trying to make an excuse on a guy being injured. Everybody deals with it. But I'm just trying to put some context around why they might have looked so shocked during that game, because it was very uncharacteristic Minnesota football.
No, for sure. And those are great points that I don't, and I think anyone listening needs to pay attention to that, because the average fan doesn't understand probably all that goes into that. And then B, how much that could impact team. And honestly, on both sides of the ball too. I mean, look at from a Purdue standpoint, you sit there and you're like, all right, I prepared you may have been getting at this, but I prepared for having 24 back there and now he ain't there. Oh shit. Like, here we go. Like, all right, we could do something here. So, I think it goes both ways. And it's pretty interesting.
It is. But I'm with you. No panic for Minnesota, and I can get back on the Purdue train real quick as well.
I appreciate you hopping on it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, they're a good. I just need them to be consistent. I need them to build consistency.
Is that not the factor of every great football team and every program that's running right now? I mean, consistency is what you're defined by.
Yeah, this is very true.
Anyone can go out and knock someone out once.
You're right. Happens. And then Illinois. And we had this just in terms of the fact that this is a good football team, in terms of the fact that this is a team that is going to compete and win games that they're not supposed to win on paper. And we know that Brett Bielema is a very good coach, and he has 2 phenomenal coordinators. Barry Lunney Jr. running his offense was maybe one of the best hires across college football in the offseason. That guy is a really good offensive coordinator. Ryan Walters, their defensive coordinator, was probably the biggest keep of the offseason. They paid this man $1.2 million or whatever it was in the offseason because they knew that he could be anywhere calling defense, and he's probably going to be a head coach pretty soon. And he goes into Madison, his return there. They won that game in Madison for the first time in 20 years. Illinois had not won there since 2002. And it was emphatic the way that they did it. And their offense, to me, I think is a marvel. I just mentioned how good I think they are. Chase Brown, really good running back. I didn't give him his proper do during the offseason as I was ranking players throughout the Big Ten. I thought he was a good back, but I didn't know if he was ready to break through. This guy can handle volume and he can change the game. The DeVito transfer was big for them. But what they did to this Wisconsin offense, you hold that offense to 2 rushing yards in the game. Holy moly. Like, I mean, we know they struggle throwing the football, and so everybody's like, you got to stop the run. If you can limit Wisconsin's running game, you'll have success. 2 yards on the ground, Wisconsin had. It's amazing.
I want to know the last time that happened.
Like
that.
I'm gonna see if I can find you that stat.
Yeah, like that's insane. That's insanity, especially with, and I think Braylon Edwards or Braylon Allen had both of them.
Yeah, seriously.
And he only touched the ball 8 times, I think. Yeah, I mean, Wisconsin lost the turnover battle, turned it over 3 times, lost time possession battle, and their baby, 2 rushing yards. It's a bad performance. And I think, I know we're going to talk about it a little bit later on, but I think some of that probably led to ultimately what happened with Coach Chryst. So, I tip of the cap to Illinois, I think right now. Go ahead.
Let's see. They ran for 2 yards on 24 carries, with the longest run being just 5 yards. It was their fewest rushing yards since 2015, and the second fewest they've had in a home game since that 2015 loss to Northwestern.
Oh,
so
wow.
there you go. I didn't think it would be
Okay.
that recent. They had 208 total yards, their fewest in a home game against an unranked team since 2012. So there you go on the stats.
Okay. Well, hey, whatever. Good. Anyway,
I mean, it's wild performance. It's a hell of a deal, man.
It is, and like I said, I don't want to take away from Illinois. I think big tip of the cap, like you said. I think you did a great job bringing this in. Like, tip of the cap to Illinois, did a hell of a job preparing, did a hell of a job ultimately then executing, which is oftentimes those 2 lines get construed when you're evaluating. Yes, you can prepare and evaluate and have a great game plan, but then going out and actually executing it and or making adjustments and then executing on those adjustments to ultimately win the game. That's a whole nother ball game. And Wisconsin, just kind of looked sheepish. I think that's a great adjective for Wisconsin the past couple of years. It's just been sheepish. Like, they've been like, okay, we'll beat up on these guys, and then we'll go to the Big Ten championship game, take it in the chin, and then just go. Like, it's just been like that's kind of been their. When you watch them play, you're like, damn, like these guys are tough defensively, like offensively, they don't have anything, and then it's just kind of like they're cool with just getting stepped on in the Big Ten championship game, and then rolling into some bowl game, and whatever happens there happens, and then it's on to the next one.
So let me throw this in context, because I saw a tweet that said that Wisconsin basically, since maybe like 2018, has been favored in every game except for when they've played Ohio State, and they haven't won all of those games. So right. I'm with you. Like, they beat up on the teams that they're really supposed to beat up on. They get into some ugly games and lose to some teams they shouldn't lose to, and they don't beat the teams that they're not supposed to beat, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really goes into this. Actually, a great segue into our big storylines, because Paul Chryst is out at Wisconsin, and a lot of people are asking the question why. And you have to put the context around this. Like, Wisconsin's a program that hasn't fired a coach in 30 years. Like, they're built on stability, and Paul Chryst was one of their own, and they got rid of him. But you have to look at the trends, and I started going through some of the stats. And from 2015, when Paul Chryst was hired, to 2020, he won 76% of his games. And that's good. He made it to Big Ten championships. We understand that. Didn't win them. You're playing Ohio State, or you're playing, Penn State or whomever.
State,
yeah. It's tough sledding, but like, made it to the Big Ten championship. Again, Wisconsin had won Big Ten championships in 2010, 11, and 12. So this is something that they feel like they can do. Then you look at 2020 and beyond for Paul Chryst, and he had won just 60% of his games, and it was trending downward for this year. This year felt like a year where they weren't going to win 60% of their games. And this was a team that a lot of the media had picked to win the West. I certainly didn't, but a lot of people thought that they were good enough to do so.
Yeah.
And so they make a change, and they're rolling with Jimmy Leonard as their interim head coach. A lot of lot of thoughts on that. I'll let you go just on your general thoughts of the state of the program right now, and then I'll hit you with a couple things to think about.
So listen, I'll just touch on the whole Jim Leonhard thing. Obviously, it didn't work out at Nebraska, like bringing one of your own in there, but I am a huge fan of that. Like, I love people who have more than a monetary and or stepping stone vested interest in programs taking over those programs, because I think it's if you have the right combination of personal pride and blood ties and then drive to take that program to the next level and the right processes to do it and the right mindset, I think it can be a really, really good combination. The cool thing is I don't think we've had that in like a really long time in college football. And now you have it down at Miami. You have it. You could possibly have it up here at Wisconsin. There's a few other programs where they have guys that have ties and blood ties to those programs. So I think it's a good thing, and at least to give this guy a chance in the way that Jim has the better half of a season, to prove he's the guy. I think it's a great opportunity for him. And I don't think it's a bad idea. Could I also see someone making an argument for like, hey, we should probably get someone outside the program, fresh view, fresh whatever, fresh thought processes, maybe, new sexy identity, who knows, right?
Right.
But I wouldn't be disheveled or pissed off if they kept Jim Leonhard, and I think he could do some really good things there. We're dropping our merch.
We got to start calling Underwood Daddy Brad.
But I'm a big pod guy.
Breaking news. The Field of 68 has an online store, and it's your one-stop shop for the latest and greatest merch in college basketball and college football. You can find shirts to support your favorite team, make fun of your rival team, or boast Field of 68 catchphrases like Daddy Brad, Cussin' and Discussin', and the Star Heels. Go to www.fieldof68.shop today and enter promo code TOUCHDOWN for 20% off at checkout.
Yeah, I think the defensive identity is in the fiber of this program, so that makes sense. And Jim Leonhard is a sharp guy. First time I met him was in 2015 at an award ceremony. It was the Lot Impact Award. He had won it. And he was back as a speaker, and he was just as engaging and awesome as can be. Played for a while in the NFL. He's had people looking at him as a defensive coordinator for NFL jobs. Like, this guy certainly has the pedigree. He connects with players. He's great with the media. And then they want to keep that defensive identity for sure. I think the reason why you make this move, and we know where college football is at, like there's an early signing period, and you want to be able to engage with potential candidates so you can take care of your class. But Wisconsin, there's always been this idea of a natural succession plan for when Paul Chryst eventually would leave the job, that Jim Leonhard could take over as the head coach. So now you give him an audition. But the other part of this too is Wisconsin has to have some awareness about the type of program they've been historically. Brett Bielema, part of his falling out was like, it was a money thing. Pay me more, give me more money for my assistants. And they're like, this is not what we do. And Barry Alvarez isn't the AD anymore. But like historically, that's how it was. And he was like, okay, I'm going to go somewhere where the money is going to be what I need it to be. Wisconsin has fallen behind in facilities, and I'm not exactly sure who's opening up their purse strings for a potential head coach. Jim Leonhard's a guy who played there. He's coached there. Probably get him at a discount. He's going to be a quality head coach. So that might be part of it. The other thing too is if, like Nebraska is probably going all in on Lance Leipold right now. If Wisconsin thinks that he's a guy who has natural ties to the state of Wisconsin, are they going to go all in too? So you have to get ahead of that aspect of it as well. So there are multiple factors in here. I'm just very curious to see, first off, how Jim Leonhard does, and I wish him the best. So I hope he does well, but also what their mentality is in terms of engaging potential candidates.
No doubt.
So it brings up the question though, because I just mentioned Nebraska and their pursuit of, different potential candidates. What's the better opening right now, Wisconsin or Nebraska?
I really don't think there's even I mean, I guess you could kind of debate it, but I think Wisconsin, just because of where the program is, I mean, to your point, they've played in Big Ten championships as of late. You can sell that to kids. Madison, for what I can't really speak on the facilities up there, but from what I've seen, game day experience, everything, fan engagement, it's still there. Not saying that it's not there at Nebraska, but there's just been so much turmoil there right now. It seems like if I was looking at it, like, yeah, I'll go to Wisconsin. If they had a new cool vibe, like, hey man, they competed for Big Ten championships. They're winning football games for the most part. Again, historically recent memory. I think it's just easier to go into Wisconsin and save that before it gets to the point where I think Nebraska is. I think if you look at them on a sliding scale, like Wisconsin's on that, backwards downward trend, but it's way higher than where Nebraska is on that dip.
Yeah, it's interesting because, with these coaching moves, I think, and this is assuming that both of these jobs are up for consideration for outside head coaches. You get the roster turnover naturally when you hire a new guy. But I think that the Wisconsin personnel may be better developed. The Nebraska personnel is better to me. I think they just have a better chess piece. I mentioned the facilities aspect of it. Nebraska is building a new one right now, and their boosters are going to pay a coach a ton of money. So if all things were equal financially, I think it's a no-brainer for Wisconsin. I think that there are going to be a lot of candidates who would be enamored by what Nebraska can provide financially to try to fast track getting back on pace. And I think a lot of the issues within their program have been administrative, but the athletic director who made some of the previous decisions ain't around anymore. And I think Trev is a really, really sharp guy. And administrative from the coaching aspect too, of like, Scott he fumbled that thing. Like he just did not do a good job. So it'll be interesting. I'm down on Nebraska as a job as a whole though. And there are a lot of people who still view Nebraska the way that they probably did in the 90s and the early 2000s, as this is a great place. And, they get sellout crowds and there's all the money and they've won championships. It's not what it is anymore. And both of these places to me are recruiting outposts. So personnel is going to be difficult, especially if you don't have natural ties to the area and know how to recruit, bringing kids there. So like these two spots have some built-in challenges, but I do agree with the fact that Wisconsin has the recent success that you feel like it'd be easier to parlay into right now success.
I think it's two different stages, right? It's two different commitment levels. If I'm just like, let's say they are hiring from outside, there's no ties, there's no nothing like that. There's just Wisconsin and Nebraska are open, and like I get a golden ticket that says, hey, you can pick whichever job you want to take that's open and you'll get it. Like I'm sitting there going, I think I have to have two different approaches. Like I think the ultimate risk is greater at Nebraska, but the reward is much higher than at a Wisconsin, where the risk may not be as great. Your yield isn't going to be as great either from there, if that makes sense. It's just kind of like a safe trade versus like a really aggressive, like if it works out, it could be insane. If it doesn't, it's going to be catastrophic. Whereas if you go to Wisconsin, to me, it's going to be a very, very safe thing. There's not as much BS that you got to fix. You're kind of really just like, okay, how can I get some players in here? Right. And now with the transfer portal and all that, like you can do that. It's just about being a guy that can hit on those, similarly to how Lincoln Riley did. Like take Caleb Williams and the Jordan Addison thing out of it. Like at USC, Lincoln Riley hit on. I mean, I think he brought like 20 guys in there, and all of them are contributors right now. So it's like you just kind of have to hit on that at a place like Wisconsin and Nebraska too. But I think there's also some stuff that you got to fix at Nebraska. I think it's just two different investments.
No, I'm with you. In Wisconsin, you knew offensive philosophy. Nebraska, the expectation level of the fans too. I'm not sure when that's going to turn over, but that's always going to be a challenge for whoever's coaching there. Wanted to touch on this real quick, but I called the Ohio State Rutgers game. Got some fireworks in that. Your guy, my guy, Greg Schiano giving Ryan Day the business, and Ryan was giving it back to him. That was it was good TV. I'll put it like that. And those two guys have a ton of respect for each other. I think both of those guys are well respected around college football too. So the fireworks were, it was momentary, and then they hugged it out after the game. But in the midst of that, CJ Stroud had a very, very pedestrian day, under 60% completion rate. I think he threw for like 150, 160 yards against Rutgers, who defensively they're a solid team, but they were really a stop the run team. And Mayan Williams just ran up and down the field on him. He missed some wide open guys, just didn't see it well. I don't think he was stepping into throws. Is there any reason for concern with this guy, or is this just a day where he wasn't clicking?
I think that's one of those things, like playing the quarterback position at an elite level consistently is probably one of the hardest things to do. And that's why when you really talk about it, like the best of the best, there's probably like 3 or 4 of them, and they've been able to do it at a more efficient clip than anybody else. Like, I'm not worried about this kid at all. Got 18 touchdowns this year through 5 games. Like, he's still going to be a Heisman contender. He's still going to have some bigger games down the road where he's going to have to perform. Doesn't have Jackson Smith and Jigba back yet, really. Has been doing it with, I hate to say it, but other guys, but they're still guys.
Yeah, they're good guys.
Yeah. But he's been doing it with guys that maybe, some of them that he didn't think he would have to do it with. I'm not too concerned. And then to me, like, the fact that Mayan Williams I think he touched it 21 times, almost 190 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Like, massive, massive day. That's if I'm CJ, I'm like, hey man, thanks. Because that's just something else another team now has to prepare for, take a little bit of pressure off CJ and go. So I'm not worried about him at all. I think they still won the game 49-10. He's going to be judged whether or not he goes undefeated and takes his team to a national championship game. They're not going to be like, hey, remember in, October 1st, or when they were the first game in October when they beat Rutgers 49-10 and he only completed 13 passes. Like, no, dude, like, they're not going to remember this. He's going to be fine and keep it moving.
Yeah, it's I just wanted to hear your perspective. I'm not worried either necessarily. I think that one thing that CJ does is sometimes he just won't step into throws, and he'll just he'll trust his arm to get it out there. I think mechanically a lot of college quarterbacks struggle, and I can't tell you what the reason is. Like, and I know it's totally different. Like, you can't watch Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers all day and expect college guys to look like that. But they're so unrefined.
Well, here's the other thing is to me, the quarterback position and quarterback coaches out there in the world, in the country, like at the high school and youth level, they've turned a lot of these kids into robots. And I feel like there's a vast majority of people who think that when you're in college, like, you're kind of in your prime. Like, to me, you're still in like this discovery phase. Like, the quarterback position, to me, there's this really long discovery phase. You're probably not in your prime till you're like late 20s, maybe even early 30s in terms of fulfillment and feeling in total control of all the movements as a quarterback. And I think Aaron Rodgers is a perfect example of that. Like, when you look at that guy through his college career to his first start in Green Bay as like the guy, he's a completely different guy mechanically, completely different guy in terms of the way that he just moves in the pocket and is in flow. So to me, you still have to understand this discovery phase, and all these kids in college right now are going to either adapt and get better and continue to get better and make it in the league, or they're going to keep doing the same thing and it's not really going to work out. And I'm speaking on that from personal experience because I never got to do that as well, or until the timing was right. So what I'm saying is I think that mechanically, like, I'm not worried about it. He just needs to continue to like expose himself to as much as he can and start realizing that this runway, it's a crescendo, dude. You're like fine wine at the quarterback position. As long as you put yourself in good situations and keep working at it, like, you're going to continue to get better. You're not even probably halfway there yet in terms of what he can be mechanically.
That's really good perspective from you. And, talking about CJ, you mentioned Mayan Williams in the day that he had. I just wanted to throw this nugget out there for the people listening. And I said that he has been the most impressive player in the Big Ten to me so far this year. And a lot of people took exception to that, in Illinois fans, especially because of what Chase Brown is doing, and he's very good. Mayan Williams in 2 games of Big Ten play, averaging over 9 yards a carry, and he has 7 touchdowns in 2 Big Ten games. And this is a guy who is listed as their number 2 running back on the depth chart. Very impressive. But it brings out this conversation, though, because we know CJ Stroud is a Heisman frontrunner. Mayan Williams just had this huge game. Who else in the Big Ten besides a CJ Stroud guy is really standing out to you that deserves to be in the national conversation among the best players?
Man, it's hard, man. I think there's a lot of really good players. And I mean, I think Blake Corum, but he's been getting his roses. Talia Tagovailoa, like you were saying, we've talked about him for the past 2 years. I think he's just continued to get better and better.
Yeah.
And this year, to me, he's really showed the propensity to step up in big games and not be the guy that loses them the games, right? Like he kept them in the Michigan game. You know, he did a great job this week, just being efficient, and beating a down bad Michigan State team. But that's a good win for them. And then I really think, like, because I looked at it actually, like I looked at, we talk about this, we prep for this show. And I looked at the Big Ten stats, and there's just a lot of really good, efficient play up and down. Like there's nothing that when you're starting to talk about this, and obviously Heisman and that comes into account, like, and I know just as well, like there's a certain threshold that you need to hit. And like CJ right now is really the only guy that's in that threshold of like numbers, stats, and then overall team performance. Yeah. Like it's him or Blake Corum, within the Big Ten. But don't take that away, dude. There's a lot of really good players right now that are playing really, really well, and just to name a few of them. But I mean, hell, we'll see what happens. But there's some really good football players in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, I look at Lia Tagovailoa as a very interesting one to me. If Maryland can continue to stack wins, they're going to be a ranked team here. And they played Michigan really tight. This is a guy who's completing 75% of his passes right now. And it's not that he's not throwing the football. He's throwing the football. They got a lot of pass attempts. He's good for 280 plus yards per game. I think it's impressive. And then you mentioned Blake Corum, like, dude is just really good. And to me, he is the centerpiece of this Michigan offense as of right now. And the reason why everybody else can go out there and make the plays that they're making. So those would be the guys. For the Illinois people, I got to mention Chase Brown. Volume back. He's
leading the Big Ten, isn't he?
Yes,
in rushing, pretty much every category.
He might be up there nationally. Let me pull up the national stats here. Just to me, like, it's going to be really hard. In yards per game nationally rushing.
Yeah, it's just going to be really hard for him unless they go out and fuck around and win the Big Ten. Like, if that happens, then you're talking about him in terms of like national stage and national recognition. That's what Illinois has got to do.
Well, I mean, if they win the West, which is perfectly in view for them, I mean, he's going to be in the conversation for a lot of these national awards, which goes to our last topic here in terms of our big storylines. But like, West is wide open. Everybody's 1-1 except for Wisconsin, who's sitting there at 0-2. Illinois had a big win. Purdue pulled off a victory over Minnesota. Like, does this change your perspective on the West, or are you still kind of, you said it early, Minnesota's the class of the West. Do you think that they're going to be challenged? Because Illinois, you got Iowa coming up, and then I believe the week after that is Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, I think I still believe in Minnesota. I think they're the most complete veteran team. And I think that's going to pay dividends towards the back half of this year. And just terms of having been there, having been in the hunt, not really getting it done in the past, just having that feeling and a lot of those core guys still there. I think that's a big, big part of it. But obviously, like, you can't take away this Purdue team. I think as long as Aiden O'Connell's on the football field for Purdue, I think they have a chance. I know he didn't play well last week, but I'm completely sold on that kid. And to your point, I think this Illinois team's scary, but to me, Minnesota's, we talked about consistency, has been the most consistent program in the West over the past 3 years. So that's what I'm going to hang my hat on. And if it burns me, I'll take my medicine and it burns me,
I'm 100% with you. I'll go with the consistent team. I thought that Minnesota was really uncharacteristic on Saturday. It's an aberration to me. I don't expect them to look the way that they did the rest of the year. All right, let's get into a couple of previews before I hit you with a little line of questioning, and then we'll get up out of here. Purdue at Maryland, and this is what I was talking about with this Maryland team. Like, opportunities everywhere. I feel like this is a great matchup game for either one of these teams. Maryland is favored by 3 points. The over-under is 59.5. Betting lines are provided by BetRivers Sportsbook. What are your general thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a quarterback shootout. I really do. I think Purdue is going to find a way to put points on the board. I think Maryland is also going to do the same. Ultimately, it's going to come down to who turns the football over, and who can possess the football longer. So that's the way I'm looking at it. I'm not going to give a prediction. I think if I'm a bettor, I'm staying away from this just because of I might bet the over just because I think both these guys are explosive, but that's probably the only thing. That's as far as I'd go. I'd stay away from it. And Purdue's, I can't trust Purdue.
This is what I'll be looking out for, essentially. That damn man-to-man coverage for Purdue, because they are who they are.
Yeah.
They played it against Minnesota. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And Maryland has guys that can win one-on-ones, man. And I have a feeling that they're going to win those one-on-one battles. And the thing that stood out to me, at least pretty early in the game, is Maryland's offensive line really held up against Michigan State. And we know that their defense is battered, but that was a good defensive front early on in the year.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave Leah time to find guys improvising on routes when they were in man-to-man coverage. You slip a guy in the back end and you're doing the scramble drill and he's hitting chunks. And I think that if they can hold up again up front, like, these guys are just going to get loose, man. That's the way I'm seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I see that. I see that as well. I'm not ignorant. I see that as well. But like I said, I don't know what this Purdue team's going to do, dude. Like, they could come out and hang 60 on them and I wouldn't be surprised. And they could come out and lay an absolute goose egg and I wouldn't be surprised. That's why I like
don't
watching.
know what they're going to do, dude. Yeah, none of us do. It's for people who are interested in what we have to say. We're guessing just like you are.
Yeah.
I'm not ignorant needs to be a t-shirt. I'm going to get that one made up. Send me your address. I'll ship you one.
All
right. And then Iowa at Illinois. Illinois favored by 3.5. The over-under is 35.5. Not expecting a ton of points in this one. Let me just say this. Iowa might not score a point this game if they don't score on defense. They might not score a damn point this game. This Illinois defense is for real. And so that's my take on it. The 35.5, it might be 38-0 affair, and it's all Illinois.
Oh yeah, I'm not ignorant. I'm taking Illinois, and that's because Iowa's been consistently terrible offensively. Yes. So I'm not. I'll ride with the consistency here. And I think Illinois done enough this year to show me who they are as well. So, I'm rocking with the Illini.
All right. Well, before we get you up out of here, I want to take a walk down memory lane with you. I was very curious. I was thinking about this a couple days ago. What was your first car?
Like that I owned?
No, that you drove in high school or whatever.
Well, I drove my dad's truck in high school.
Okay.
But my first truck was a 2001 Chevy Silverado. I got that in college.
Okay. And then what do you currently drive?
I drive I have my nice truck and my beater truck. I have a 2014 Raptor and I have a 1994 Ford Bronco that I probably drive more. I drive that more than I do my red truck.
You got Raptor. the OJ Simpson.
Yeah.
Nice.
Black, lifted, black wheels. Yeah.
It's probably the most unshocking thing is that you're a truck guy. That shocks me very, very little. I just needed to hear it. The first car I drove in high school was a Ford 500 sedan. It was my dad used to get company cars, and they, you could buy it out at the end of the deal. And so he bought it out. That was his old car. And then he had a Lincoln Navigator after that. And when I got to school, I was like, "Hey, yo, Dad, let me hold the keys." And so he actually said, "Yeah, you can have the car." So I drove that for many a year. And then just this probably is unsurprising to people because I'm bougie. I got to the league. I bought a Lexus. I loved it. I had low profile tires on it though, and I kept bending my rims on potholes, and it was a real financial atrocity for me. So then I got into an SUV, and I currently have an X5 BMW. It's like the most suburban dad car that you could drive. So I think it perfectly epitomizes who we are. You are a truck guy, and I drive soft suburban cars.
No, I probably would have pegged you as that, or you'd have been like, an Escalade guy for sure.
Yeah.
I think you might grow into an Escalade.
Yes.
And I honestly, my lifestyle might pull me away from that as well. I got a wife that's more of a beach girl, and so who knows? But I'm gonna hang on to it as long as I got it.
Yeah, I really have a burning desire to get back into a sedan. I love big body sedans.
I hate getting down into them. I like for me, like getting down and getting up, like that kills me. Just hopping level.
The land yacht type sedans, though, they don't sit as low as like a Camry or whatever the case is.
Yeah, you're talking like an A8 or a 750 or something like that. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking. But my wife is like absolutely not, because she likes to sit up, all the way up.
Gotta see.
Yeah, so it's a thing, but maybe one day I'll venture in. So if it was a perfect world and I was not living in a big city like I am, and I was living back in the suburbs like I used to, I would probably get like a Ford Ranger or something to have to beat around. Like where I grew up, we were like fringe suburban rural, like lake and woods by us. So I got a little bit of that in me, but I can't bring myself to do it quite yet.
No. I mean, and like I said, you gotta adapt to your environment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't blame you in Chicago. That ain't gonna cut it.
No, it's not gonna cut it. You'd be looking at me like, bro, is this a truck in the city? What are we doing?
What are we doing here?
All right. Well, that was fun. Learned absolutely nothing about you today, but that's all good. We'll peel back some of the layers of this.
I am
not so
who
thick
you
onion.
thought I was. I am who you thought I was.
Yeah. Boy, man, this is the JP and Hack Show, part of the Field 12 Media Network, sponsored as always by Bet Rivers. For Christian Hackenberg, I am Joshua Perry, and we will talk to you next week.